This may be one of the best deals in hi-fi going right now. If you like the sound that these speakers put out. Because I would not consider these speakers to be neutral. I would not consider these speakers to be for everyone. But it's definitely the type of speaker that I like. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the Dolly Opticon 6 Mark II. I have been a bit of a Dolly fan from the beginning of the channel. I had the Spectre 1s, little tiny bookshelf speakers, Spectre 2s, slightly less tiny bookshelf speaker, but I haven't had a Dolly speaker on my ears for quite some time. So I was super excited to talk to Dolly when I was at the Audio Advice live show in August. And the Opticon 6, I was thrilled to find out, came in around $2,500 a pair. I know, don't shoot the messenger. That's not super cheap. But it's also not super expensive, especially when you look at the Opticon 6 compared to the rest of the Dolly line. Because if you look closely at the Opticon 6, you will see that there are not one, but two tweeters. You have a ribbon tweeter on top of a soft dome tweeter. It's like getting an extra tweeter for free. Anyway, the point is, that design, that double tweeter design, goes all the way up the chain with Dolly's more expensive speakers. So this is the cheapest Dolly speaker with that double tweeter design. So it's still cheap. Still the cheap audio, man. Let's talk about some specs. But first, a word from our sponsor, Aeropress. You probably know just how much I love coffee. I'm constantly on the go, and I've tried Treble coffee systems, but I've discovered the only coffee maker that makes the best travel coffee is Aeropress. And now they've introduced a complete travel system. Their newest innovation, the Aeropress Go Plus, is the first product that makes great tasting coffee using a brewing system that was designed for life on the go. It's a coffee brewing revelation. The Aeropress Go Plus makes having great coffee super easy. I'm getting ready to go to Capitol Audio Fest. And let me tell you, the coffee in the room, not great. But in like 2 minutes, I can make the best cup of coffee that I've had. Trust me, this is not hyperbole. I literally just made this, and it is one of, if not the best cups of coffee I've ever had. And I did it on my coffee table. Get it? Coffee table? And the Aeropress coffee is one of the smoothest, velvety, it's not bitter, and it has a full-bodied finish. Kind of like wine, but not made from grapes, it's made from coffee grounds. And we've got an incredible offer just for you, the Cheap Audio Man viewers. Visit aeropress.com/cheapaudioman and use the code cheapaudioman and get 20% off your Aeropress Go Plus. Say no to crappy coffee, and yes, to better adventures drinking yummy, delicious Aeropress coffee on the go. Check out the link in the description, aeropress.com/cheapaudioman. Use the code cheapaudioman to get 20% off your order. Thank you, Aeropress. This speaker comes in at a sensitivity of 88 dB and has a nominal impedance of 4 ohms. What this means is you may want a little bit of juice when you put an amplifier on this thing. You may want your amplifier to have a little bit of oomph. You definitely want your amplifier to go down and be safe at 4 ohms because this speaker, we'll get into it later, but this speaker can drop bombs. And when a speaker can drop bombs, it means it needs some juice. Some power. Comes with a 1 1/8 inch ultra light, textile, dome tweeter. A little bit bigger than the normal 1 inch. It's an eighth of an inch bigger. And it also comes in with 1 3/4 inch by 11/16 inch ribbon tweeter. And that's where some of the magic, that's the magic maker for this speaker. Two 6.5 inch wood fiber cone woofers. Dolly does woofers really well. And if you look at their woofers, they're different, obviously, from a lot of the competition. They have that red, deep red burgundy, as my mom would call it, burgundy. How many times? I haven't seen anything that's burgundy. But in the 80s and 90s, there's an awful lot of things that were burgundy. It's a deep red. This is called a 2.5-way speaker. It has crossovers at 800 hertz, 2200 hertz, and 14,000 hertz. As an MDF cabinet, dual ports on the back, and one of the differences between the Opticon series and the Step Up series is the enclosure construction, okay? The more expensive one, I think, has veneer or something like that. Looks a little bit better. However, I don't particularly care about how a speaker looks when you're getting this much performance. I would rather buy the less pretty speaker that still performs almost as well as the prettier, much more expensive speaker. I believe the Rubicore 6 is the step up from the Opticon. And they are coming in, now I'm not saying that the Opticon 6 are exactly the same speaker, except the Rubicore is just built better or has a shinier veneer or whatever it is. But they're coming in at $2,400 a piece. So the Opticon 6 is less than half the price of the Rubicon 6. Okay? Okay. I did feel like these speakers needed a little bit of time to break in. They have been in my living room for a couple of weeks at this point, and when I first took them out, they were a little bit mid-range forward, a little bit top-end forward. But after a few days, the bass came in fuller. I got a lot more bass, is what I'm saying. To the point where now it's a very dynamic, very lively speaker, very punchy. With the double tweeter design, I was getting a little bit of, I wouldn't say too much information, but the only thing that I had to do, I had these towed in at me. Towed in basically means the tweeters facing my face, okay? I basically towed these out a little bit to where they're just looking straight out into the room. They're not towed in at all. And for my ear, that brought the top end in line with the bottom end, and it gave me a more enjoyable listening experience. However, when you do that, sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of imaging. And imaging basically means where things are placed in space within the sound stage. And I still got a great center image. I wasn't even running a center channel, so I was watching TV and listening to music on these speakers. Speakers not picky about placement, gives you great imaging. Let's talk about bass. Has a low frequency roll off of 49 hertz, which is pretty high for a floor standing speaker. I have the SVS SB1000 Pro sub. I had that going with these speakers. In the beginning, I didn't think the speaker had enough bass, so I hooked up the subwoofer, dialed it in to where I wanted it to be. And as I was listening to this speaker, as I had it going for longer and longer, I felt like the bass was too much. So I kept eking down the subwoofer to the point where I just turned the subwoofer off. So that tells me that they did need a little bit of break-in. 49 hertz is pretty high. So if you want to hear all of the music, if you like to listen to music that has a lot going on, well, below 50 hertz, you're gonna need a subwoofer. But for my type of music, which is rock and roll, metal, a little bit of grunge, punk, I didn't really feel like I needed a subwoofer after these broke in a little bit. For TV and movie watching, I think you're gonna need a subwoofer, especially if you like science fiction or stuff with a lot of explosions, a lot of gunfire, tanks, or deep space travel. gonna want a subwoofer. With all that said, I think the bass is spectacular, and I think the bass, when it needs to drop bombs, drops huge bombs. And you're gonna wanna wait till the end, because I did run room correction via the Weem Ultra, and you'll be surprised at what happened, but you gotta wait till the end. Dropping bombs with Intergalactic. Articulate with Miles Davis's So What. Clean, clear, not muddy at all. Fast bass, spectacular bass, but not super extended, and they don't claim to be super extended. Now this is personal preference. I love detail. I love detail in vocals. I love detail on the top end. I love detail in cymbals. I love that air. I just love to hear the room, and that's why I love speakers generally with ribbon tweeters, because I just feel like a soft dome tweeter, an aluminum dome tweeter just can't reproduce what a ribbon tweeter can. With all that said, sometimes when you have a speaker that just has a ribbon tweeter, the mid-range vocals especially can come off as being a little bit cool, which means someone that has a rich, deep voice like Johnny Cash, sometimes you don't get that richness. It doesn't sound bad at all, but it doesn't quite sound natural. With the dual tweeter design, I think I'm getting both of that. The crossing of the streams is happening here, and we're getting not only ultra clean, clear vocals, but we're also getting a little bit of warmth when the recording calls for it, like God Is Gonna Cut You Down by Johnny Cash. There also doesn't seem to be any handoff at the crossover point between male and female vocals. Lena Hall was spectacular. Alanis Morissette, the MTV Unplugged album, is super sibilant. There was some sibilance there because the recording is sibilant, but it wasn't in your face like some speakers can be. Once again, with treble, we have none of the issues with an aluminum dome tweeter. We have all the benefits of a ribbon tweeter, and we have the natural reproduction of a soft dome tweeter, which means you get the shimmer, the shine, the air, the decay of a cymbal hit, but it doesn't have that aluminum dome twang. And treble here, I feel like, is right where it needs to be. Not super lifted, definitely not rolled off. If you have these towed in directly at you, it can be a little bit much. You get those off axis, you get yourself off axis just a little bit. And the treble here is perfect. What are my final thoughts? As you might have guessed, I certainly do love this speaker, and since it's on sale, it's even a better deal. I know $2,000 is nothing to sneeze at when it comes to buying a pair of speakers, but if you look at what you're getting here, basically a bit of a Rubicore light type of speaker. I have never seen this dual tweeter design, and whatever Dolly did, they nailed it, because you get all the benefits of a ribbon tweeter, all the benefits of a soft dome tweeter, and you have a mid-range that stays warm when it needs to be warm. Wouldn't consider this speaker to be neutral. Actually, when I ran the room correction, I noticed there was a couple of dips in the mid-range. That could be part of my room, because obviously I don't have the equipment to measure these speakers in an anechoic type of an environment. When I did run room correction and I turned it on with the Weem Ultra, I did not like the sound. It brought the mid-range up way too much, and it felt like it neutered the speaker a little bit. Didn't have that punch on the bottom. This is exactly the type of speaker that I like without room correction. I need to play around with it a little bit more, because I think if I run room correction and I keep it at 250 hertz and below, it might be a little bit better, but I did not like what the Weem Ultra room correction software did in the mid-range to this speaker. So I just turned it off. This speaker has a lot of personality, and it has the sound, the sonics that I just love. Exciting, dropping bombs on the bottom, clean, clear mid-range, and a top end that I think is borderline unrivaled by any speaker that I've heard. You do get some similar vibes from something like the XT1 from Emotiva, maybe even the XT2, however, I haven't heard the XT2. But when I'm thinking about this and I'm looking at other speakers that are in the same price range, something like the Q Acoustics 5050, I love Q Acoustics. I love the 5000 series line of Q Acoustics. I think it's one of the best speakers they've ever put out. But for me, I would buy the Dolly Opticon 6 Mark II over the 5050, mostly because of the top end, but also because of the bottom end. I like that it rolls off at 49 hertz because that means that I can dial in a subwoofer and get it just right in my room. I don't have a ton of overpowering bass in my room. At $2,000 for a pair of these, this is probably the best speaker I've ever heard. For me, personally, I'm not saying this is going to be the perfect speaker for you. But if you like that top-end clarity, I think this is the speaker for you. They do have some bookshelves in this range, but they don't have that dual tweeter design. And I think the magic of this speaker, I know the magic of this speaker is in that dual tweeter design. 10 out of 10 speaker, brilliant speaker. If you're considering this speaker, I would get it now. It's not too big, comes in at 42 pounds, about 10 inches wide, 39 inches, perfect speaker size. Not too big, not too small. Goldilocks speaker. Thank you to Aeropress for sponsoring today's video. If you want to check out another speaker that I think gives you some similar vibes but comes in at half the price, check out my video on the XT1 from Emotiva. I will put it here or here. If you like this video, share it out, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching.